Hello and welcome to my match preview for Chelsea versus Arsenal on Sunday the 17th of September at 1:30 p.m. at Stamford Bridge. Now obviously this is a huge game for Arsenal. There's a lot of talk about how Arsenal handle these big away games at other clubs in the top six, and we all know what happened the last time we had one of those games at Anfield a few weeks ago, and there's a real pressure on Arsenal, I think, to show that, well, obviously it wasn't a one-off, but show that we put that behind us. We've done fairly well against Conte's Chelsea actually, but obviously at Stamford Bridge they found us pretty light work, which they have over the last 5 or 6 seasons really, which is why it's really difficult to be optimistic as an Arsenal fan for this fixture. I think what's really interesting about this is having had the Europa League game on Thursday, a couple of days before, we've really revealed our hand in terms of our team selection. So Ozil, Welbeck, Lacazette were all left out, which you presume means they're all going to start on Sunday. And probably Alexis Sanchez on the bench, which I think at this stage of the season, with his kind of match fitness not quite there, I'm fairly okay with that. In the normal run of things, with Danny Welbeck playing the way he is, I'd be inclined perhaps to leave Mesut Ozil out, as tough a decision as that is for a game like this. I think he has kind of failed to impose himself on these kind of big away games against the top six. Nevertheless, he was terrific at Wembley in the cup final back in May. And I think Arsenal's midfield really caught Chelsea by surprise that day. We pushed Ramsey and Ozil up nice and high, and then they kept dropping deep to collect the ball from Xhaka, and they completely confused the positioning of Kante and Matic. I think Chelsea will be wise to that this time, and Arsenal will probably have to come up with a slightly different trick. I think the selection of Danny Welbeck makes perfect sense. He's playing very well this season, but I think he's shown both in the Cup final and the Community Shield that he's a really valuable weapon against Chelsea because of his ability to press from the front. And Lacazette is good at this as well. Ozil's quite good at this when he puts his mind to it as well. It's not as obvious in the physical sense, but his spacing is quite intelligent. And this is really important against Chelsea because they don't really have well, it depends if they start Cesc Fabregas, which you expect they might. But a lot of their play is built through David Luiz, who plays in that kind of central centre back role. But really, he's their first playmaker. He's the one that builds play from the back. And what Danny Welbeck's done really, really well in the last couple of games against Chelsea is disrupt David Luiz and stop him picking those passes out of defence into midfield. And that's going to be really important on Sunday. Obviously, it serves a good defensive purpose in terms of disrupting Chelsea's build-up play, but it serves a really good offensive purpose as well in terms of turning the ball over high up the pitch and releasing the likes of Ozil and Lacazette up front. And I think the way Arsenal pressed really intensely on the three Bournemouth centre halves last Saturday, I think that's going to be the blueprint for this game from an Arsenal point of view. In fact, I think that's a little bit of the reason why Arsenal concentrated on doing that so much against Bournemouth. It was almost a preparation tactic. And I think what you'll see is Danny Welbeck absolutely run his legs off for 70 minutes or so, really look to disrupt that Chelsea backline when they try to build play, try and force turnovers and get Ozil and Lacazette on the ball in the final third when Chelsea aren't set. I think that will be the real focus of our attacking play. And then, for the last 25, 20 minutes, having someone like Alexis Sanchez to bring off the bench to create that kind of chaos and that impetus could be a very, very valuable weapon. But obviously, this is all the theory. This is what I think Arsene Wenger will be thinking. And I don't usually like to talk about the intangibles too much in football because I think they're a bit overplayed and they're quite easy. And no one can prove you wrong when you say, well, mentally the team aren't there. I think it's a bit easy. However, I think it's pretty undeniable that Arsenal do have a bit of a psychological problem with this type of game. And what's really important is for them to really start well, I think, and start on the front foot, not necessarily in terms of attacking Chelsea per se, but starting on the front foot with that front three, really putting the Chelsea back three under pressure. Obviously, there's a concern about the midfield. The cupboard's been a little bit empty there for Arsenal over the last few games, but we play pretty much the same formation as Chelsea, so Ramsey and Xhaka should be able to match up with Chelsea's two, whether that's Kante and Fabregas or Kante and Bakayoko. We ought to not get outnumbered at the very least, and that will depend on Ramsey and Xhaka being very disciplined, which they aren't always, in fairness. So that's really where the key to the game is. I think if Arsenal are mentally sound, they can hurt Chelsea with that front three, with that pressing tactic. The worry for me is how the midfield goes, and whether they can stay nice and disciplined, because it's still such a problem area for the team. And usually in these games as well, the first goal, it's such a cliche, but cliches are cliches because they're true. And the first goal, I think, will go so far in determining the outcome of this game. Um, I think this is going to be quite an interesting game, actually. I think Arsenal have got a fairly good recent history against Chelsea, even if their recent history at Stamford Bridge is pretty miserable. I think this is going to be quite a close game, actually, and I sense the expectation levels among the Arsenal fan base are very, very low, which I think is totally understandable. But I think this might be a draw, actually. So I'm going for 1-1, which I think would be which would represent a very good result for Arsenal at this point in the season, and something to build on and perhaps feel a bit positive about, particularly with Alexis Sanchez to kind of hopefully work his way back up to full fitness. Um, so yeah, we'll see what happens on Sunday. Obviously, big game. I hate going to Stamford Bridge these days because there's such an air of inevitability about it all, but I wouldn't say upbeat's overstating it, but I'm relatively positive that Arsenal can put in a good display, good account of themselves, and hopefully come out with a decent result. I will be back with a preview for the West Brom game on Monday the 25th of September. Until then, up the Arsenal.